Hello and welcome to this first video, which will cover a selection of albums released in the first half of January. Oathbringer is a band hailing from Serbia founded in 2019, and Tales of Valor is the second album in a trilogy following Tales of Glory in 2022, which received both critical acclaim and positive reception from the audience. This second installment follows the recipe of the first, offering music that straddles the line between heavy and power metal, with occasional elements of thrash or doom in some riffs. It's epic and powerful, skillfully blending melody when necessary. The album exhibits greater homogeneity than its predecessor, drawing influences from a range of sources such as Dio, Bathory, Judas Priest, or Manowar, and more broadly, the heavy metal of the 80s. Yet, it maintains its originality with distinctive sounds and an atmosphere that is uniquely theirs. Oathbringer confirms the talent and potential displayed in the first album, improving and enhancing it. We eagerly anticipate the conclusion of the trilogy. My favorite track, Witch's Hut, and the one I like the least, Morgoth. 2024, yes, a very groundbreaking title, is the second album from Ravenstein, a European band, Germany, Croatia, Ireland, born during the pandemic. Much better than its predecessor, it offers well-crafted melodic heavy hard rock with fairly original vocal lines at times. On tracks ranging from ballads to classic hard rock, it's a coherent and homogeneous album, very traditional in its interpretation and enjoyable to listen to from start to finish. My favorite track, When I'm Dead and Gone, and the one I like the least, Easy Come, Easy Go. The Grandmaster is a project from Frontiers Records that brought together Edguy's guitarist Jens Ludwig and Per Johansson, the singer of the semi-cult Danish band Crystal Knight from the 80s, and more recently from the bands Fate and Uraeus. The lineup is completed by the inevitable Alessandro Del Vecchio on bass and keyboards, Mirko De Maio on drums, and Brett Jones on keyboards. Black Sun is the band's second album, offering a very classic and straightforward melodic heavy metal sound, at least in the first 5 tracks. Afterward, the group loses its way a bit in less inspired tracks, such as Something More, with its endless intro and a somewhat peculiar vocal line, drowned in annoying keyboards. Only the guitar solo stands out. Another less successful track is Fly, Icarus Fly, a cloying ballad with no particular interest. In conclusion, 'tis a partially successful album, probably much more cohesive and substantial if you remove 2 or even 3 tracks. My favorite track, Black Sun, and the one I like the least, Fly, Icarus Fly. Ruthless is a Californian band founded in 1982 and active until the late 80s before splitting. The group reformed in 2015, and The Fallen is their 4th album, but it's their 1985 EP, Metal Without Mercy, that garnered attention, propelling them as a promising band. Unfortunately, the group never confirmed their excellent beginnings. Often wrongly classified in thrash or speed metal, Ruthless offers more of a classic heavy metal sound with occasional forays into power metal. To be frank, this album is a disappointment for me. I was expecting much more from them. While no track is truly bad, none stands out either. There's an unpleasant feeling of listening to the same track 10 times with rather monotonous vocals. Only a few guitar solos and the very doomy End Times or Order of the Dragon manage to break the monotony. My favorite track, Order of the Dragon, and the one I like the least, Thulsa Doom. Scanner is a German heavy metal band with a long history, dating back to 1977. Initially under the name Reinforce, then Lion's Breed before adopting the name Scanner in 1986. While not a very prolific band, The Cosmic Race is only their 7th album, but the group has undergone numerous splits and reformations. It's worth noting that this album is a science fiction concept album, and I usually have a negative bias towards these somewhat nebulous musical storytelling endeavors. They are rarely successful. However, this time it's quite well executed. The album is very cohesive and consistent, and the story, easy to follow, complements the music. The band remains firmly rooted in the heavy metal of the 80s. If you enjoyed what Scanner offered at the beginning of their career, you'll undoubtedly appreciate this one, despite a somewhat weak production. My favorite track, Face the Fight, and the one I like the least, Space Battalion. It was a bit challenging to choose one, but the drums and vocals become a bit tiresome over the duration of this track, despite having a good riff and solid guitar solos. Russell Guns is a collaboration between two stars of American hard rock from the 80s, made possible by Frontiers Music. It's unclear whether this is just for one album or if the venture will continue with additional releases. Alongside Jack Russell on vocals and Tracy Guns on guitars, two members of L.A. Guns, Johnny Martin on bass, and Shane Fitzgibbon on drums, join in, along with Alessandro Del Vecchio on keyboards. Musically, it's not exactly Great White or L.A. Guns. It's more of a middle ground, with bluesy hard rock, heavy rock, and a touch of sleaze metal featuring simple yet effective riffs and highly accessible melodies. While Jack Russell may not have the same vocal power, his warm and melodic voice works wonders, and Tracy A. Guns can still deliver inspired and incisive solos. The only slight drawback I would note is that the band stays within its comfort zone, relying on their expertise and 40 years of experience to serve a style of music they know perfectly. I would have liked at least one track that ventures into new territory and stands out from their usual fare. Nonetheless, Medusa is a truly great album, very well produced. If you're a fan of 80s bands like Great White, L.A. Guns, Danger Danger, Trickster, you won't be disappointed. Undoubtedly, the best album from this early January selection. My favorite track, Where I Belong, and the one I like the least, Next in Line. Last in Time is an Italian band, and Too Late is their debut album. Their label Rockshots Records states in a press release that this album is recommended for fans of Toto, Whitesnake, Deep Purple, Symphony X, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and Savatage. The only influence I perceived while listening to this album is that of Toto, and the primary genre is AOR. However, I have several criticisms to make. The first, which is a deal breaker and condemns the album, is the production and mixing, or rather, the total absence thereof. It feels like the tracks were compiled and the final recording button was pressed. The second criticism is the lack of artistic direction. The album ventures into various musical genres, sometimes within the same track, without much coherence. There's even a brief instrumental of quasi-neoclassical metal. My favorite track, The Way to Rock, and the one I like the least, Moonlight Dreamers. Femme Fatale is the sophomore album from the symphonic metal supergroup Exit Eden. It follows Rhapsodies in Black, released in 2017, which was a notable success. Unfortunately, this new opus doesn't meet the same quality standards. The first piece of disappointing news is the absence of Amanda Somerville due to personal reasons. The second is the choice of cover songs, which are very mainstream and not very exciting. While I generally enjoy cover songs, in this case they range from unsuccessful It's a Sin, Poison, Kaylee, to completely out of place Désenchanté, with just passable performances on Separate Ways and Alone. we are left with half an album to explore. And fortunately, the group excels in their original compositions. However, the collaboration with Marco Iatala remains a notch below. There's undoubtedly an audience for this album, though it's not to my liking. If you enjoy metal with a strong pop influence and prominent vocals, then this album might suit your taste. For others, it might be worth skipping. My favorite track, Femme Fatale, and the one I like the least, Désenchanté. Here Comes the Rain is the 23rd album from the band hailing from Birmingham. Much like the heavy metal groups Judas Priest and Black Sabbath. However, Magnum sticks to hard rock, a sort of slightly softer Uriah Heep. To be completely honest, I've never been drawn to this group with the few tracks heard here and there, and this is the first time I've listened to one of their albums in its entirety several times. Undoubtedly, this group has a fan base that will find joy in this album. Personally, their music doesn't resonate with me, and I don't connect with it at all. It's too soft, too calm for my taste, except for the first two tracks, Run Into the Shadows and Here Comes the Rain, which are rather well done. The rest of the album sticks to ultra-predictable medium tempos or somewhat outdated ballads. Only Blue Tango, with its very rock and roll rhythm, manages to break the monotony. My favorite track, Run Into the Shadows, and the one I like the least, Borderline. Time is the fourth album from the Australians Nobody's Fool. It's a band I'm discovering, and it's the pleasant surprise of this selection. An album solid, efficient, redolent of hard rock with a slight touch of glam metal and even 80s heavy metal. One of their influences is Judas Priest, and it's clearly audible on some tracks like Time. It's not a coincidence that the album concludes with a cover of You've Got Another Thing Coming. It's a very substantial album featuring some fierce riffs, dynamic and strong vocals, and an inevitable ballad, Cry For Me, which is quite well done despite some slightly intrusive backing vocals, accompanied by a magnificent guitar solo. My favorite track, Smoke and Mirrors, and the one I like the least, Free. Beautiful Illusion is the fifth album in 5 years for the Californian duo Last World, and they continue in the same AOR, hard rock, US melodic rock style as their previous albums. This group is deeply rooted in US rock, and it's uncertain how much success they garner in Europe, which is a pity because they are very talented composers. David Cagle possesses a beautiful voice, capable of navigating a broad rock spectrum, and Jim Shepard does fantastic work on the guitars. The first part of the album is undoubtedly the most successful, opening with the powerful track Don't Tell Me I'm Wrong. Younger Days follows in the same style, reminiscent of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. I Can Explain is a pleasant ballad that could be likened to the Eagles. I Will Find My Way and Better of Me are among the most successful, featuring a faster tempo in a hard rock style tinged with blues and some furious guitars. Afterward, the album becomes a bit less strong, a bit softer with somewhat less inspired tracks, but still featuring beautiful guitar solos. The album concludes, excluding the instrumental as I dislike this genre, and this one is quite tedious, in a masterful way with the heaviest track on the album, A Step Beyond Death. My favorite track, A Step Beyond Death, and the one I like the least, You Never Listen to Me. In conclusion, I would recommend two albums for the first half of January. Medusa by Russell Guns for hard rock enthusiasts, and The Cosmic Race by Scanner, a concept heavy metal album. If your budget allows, you might also consider adding the albums by Oathbringer, Nobody's Fool, and Ravenstein. See you soon for an unboxing video and for the second part of the January releases, including the new albums from Saxon and Lucifer.